Gypsy and the Jew. Gypsy never come home till after.
Hello and welcome. In this space here, I tell stories. I tell our family histories, our whispered stories, our practiced, hidden, and sometimes long lost traditions. And as they say in the village, how the stories say, I come in that story. Last week, I talked about Gypsy in the Moonlight. Well, you didn't see my face because you see out there, the pollen so much in the cedar that I tore up my nose, my eyes, everything. I couldn't show my face in public. Yeah, that's how it was going. I got my medication for allergies, but I think this medication here very weak. So anyway, long story short, I'm better now. Not any more sneezing, not any more runny nose. It's good. I think because the rain fell. You know, it's a cherry blossom season. And when the rains come, they beat everything down. So that's what happened yesterday. All right. Gypsy in the Moonlight. I tell y'all, they get different versions, right? Hear this version. Gypsy in the moonlight, gypsy in the Jew. Gypsy never come back till 2:30. Oh, walking gypsy, walking through the door, and turn to your partner, you hear the banjo play. I do not love nobody, nobody love me too. And all I love is gypsy, and gypsy love me too. Oh, gypsy, ring, ting, ting. Oh, gypsy, ring, ting, ting. You say the ring, ting, ting? You got for wine. I don't know, it's whatever the Guyanese picnic and Caribbean picnic when they little. They know for wine. And in school, they do all these play songs and the whining does start. Well, the children who play last week, I kind of tell them he's up on the whining because, you know, Facebook and like them kind of thing. And we don't want to, you know, objectify children in a certain way. But you guys who live in the village, whether it's the Caribbean or Guyana, Buxton village, you know the whining does start. So I decided to go find out about Gypsy in the Moonlight. You see, my mind works that way. When I consider our culture, and based on the kinds of research I do, I want to know about these things. And Gypsy came into my mind. I learned that, you know, we can look at it like Gypsy's a wayward girl, right? And she came in at night. Somebody said to me, Pauline, don't take things so literal. Man, what's wrong with you? Are we having fun? We're looking at the thing all wrong, all side, right? In my line of research, we call it the emic and the ethic. That means you look at the familiar strange and you look at the strange familiar. So if you don't know what I'm doing, that's what I'm doing, right? Play along. All right. So I got some notes on this iPad here. You know, when I was thinking about Gypsy, I know that like Satira, she lived in posterity. Look, Satira and Gypsy, like Oprah and Tamron. Let me tell you, it's one name, you know. So it tells me that Gypsy made it in the annals of history. She got one name. She got fame and infamy because she in the moonlight. And we know what they say about people in the moonlight. Now, I also know that she's a woman noteworthy. You see these women like Gypsy and Satira, people tend to think of them as bad women. But they made the name. I don't know if people can ever call me Pauline in the rest of the history. Me, I don't know. How about you and your first name, Cheryl? People might never know a Cheryl, but they know Gypsy. And they know so. Yes. And these women are noteworthy. They stand out in history. When I look at it, they were supposed to be mundane women doing things that are ordinary, run of the mill. You know, when they talk about African and Guyanese history, Afro-Caribbean Guyanese history, and so on, we don't always hear about the ordinary people. And sometimes when we hear about the ordinary people, we hear about the ones that are castigated and shown in a certain kind of light. Good or bad, they're there. And they're not ignored. So I want to highlight these people and see what more we can learn about them. All right. One aspect I thought about, Gypsy was a woman of her time. And I want to think about her as doing what was socially acceptable. sporting. You know, we just call it party nowadays. Back then, the sporting. Ask your grandmother, your great aunt, and about sport. When them buy go out for sport and then woman go for sport, you know, they're getting up at midnight and so for go a party. You never been a party house. The girl, a woman used to come from town for sport in Buxton. When she come at my stepmother's house, she come afternoon, she sleep till midnight. I said, what, how this woman go a party? And she not get up for the party. Woman left house midnight. Yes, for go. Gypsy in the moonlight, gypsy in the Jew. Gypsy never come back till 2:30. That is what this version say. That me just sing. This is the Victoria version. Gypsy never come back from where? For the party? Me don't know. From where? At the other place she been? I don't know. But she never come back till 2:30. People used to leave house at midnight and so forgot to party. They were sporting people. So if Gypsy was that kind of girl, she wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. She wasn't at all. People back in the village used to like to dance and sport, and they were known for certain things. I hear that me father in the days was a dance man. He know for sport good. You used to hear about them big man, big assa, used to sport. You get Bunsy good man, them are sports people. They know for sport. You get the woman there. I not call her name because me never been a sport. So I can't tell you with any kind of definitive history about sporting because me never really sport, right? And when we did go a party late, something happened. I got to tell you about another day. Not today. Anyway. So if young people listening to me think yeah, corner the market pan liming and gaffing and going out and having a good time, I lie. Ask them old people, them know for do it good. And so much so, it then the folk sang them and the play sang them. Now, the next point I want to come to is a little bit more serious. I was researching Gypsy in the Moonlight, and all my research has been coming up on the internet, not exhaustive, just cursory or briefly. There's a guy named J.L.F. Waldron, and he wrote a book called Gypsy in the Moonlight. Like I said last time, Gypsy in the Moonlight seemed to have originated in Trinidad and Tobago. And his book, though fictional, I believe, captured the social milieu at the time, the social setting of that time. He placed the story Gypsy in the Moonlight in the 1940s during the Second World War. You know, we tend to think the Second World War was so far away, had nothing to do with the Caribbean. That's another lie. The US and Britain stationed their military in the Caribbean to ward off the German U-boats coming in that could take strategic positions and attack the United States. So guess where they were? All over the Caribbean, there were bases and so on. And Trinidad and Tobago had a base or several bases. If I'm wrong, correct me. But they were there. They said when the US servicemen came to Trinidad and Tobago, the population increased to 1/3 more. So in the 1940s, especially 1942, this guy said he set his Gypsy in the Moonlight story. Gypsy used to go out with the servicemen. Well, here's the thing. They said that in the Caribbean, the brown-skinned girls or the Sapadella brown girls were the more desirable girls. These girls were so desirable that the military servicemen were competing with the local men to get these girls. And the local men, you know, were at a disadvantage. Here's why. Because they didn't have dollars and pounds. So you had now the men losing their women to these foreigners. And on top of that, among the foreigners, they are vying for the affections of the local girls, the British and the Americans. But guess what? The Americans beat out the British because the Americans had the greenbacks. You know that Calypso with the working for the Yankee dollar? All of that, that man drew on that to write his story. So in his account, or one of the accounts I read online, it said that there was a woman who was a housekeeper, and she walked off the housekeeping job, done with duh, because she going for she Yankee dollar. So they picture Gypsy as one of those kind of women who just went about her business looking for her frecks, right? So that's a historical background for you. So we can see a little bit more of Gypsy's lifestyle, or what could have been Gypsy's lifestyle. But you know, when I was thinking about it, I learned that Gypsy is an embodiment of a working woman. You know, if she's that kind of woman on the street or with the servicemen, she was working. And we have those kind of women today. In Guyana, they have names for women who work at night or do this night walk. Well, people just make all kind of aspersions against these women. Dangles, skettle, you know, walking the street, strumpet, all them kind of names and more, you know. But when I talked to my friend Glenda said, Gypsy, I not come near me, Gypsy, me proper love she. Me say, what makes her girl? She said, listen to me. Gypsy, if she was doing what they said she do, she was doing the oldest profession in the world. Yeah, know what it is? Here now, spinal entrepreneur. Ada. Gypsy was a spinal entrepreneur. And Gypsy was earning she fricks. Before I jump up and, you know, stone Gypsy, Glenda said Gypsy, she was working for she honest dollar. She said Gypsy condition, nobody know why Gypsy was doing that. But Gypsy still had to get up and get to go and hustle for what she want. And I say, if Gypsy sell as an entrepreneur, somebody a buy. So I never bother for jump and accuse Gypsy and nothing. Jesus said, cast the stone. And he write in the dirt and nobody can cast the stone. So when I look at Gypsy, I was, you know, when Glenda said she proper like Gypsy, I said, I look up and I said, tell me more. Glenda said, look, I imagine me Gypsy with a curving she waist and she had a fat bamsy. She said when you see Gypsy walking down with a fat body, it's so the body moving. She said, Gypsy no matter girl. She said Gypsy moving. And she said the reason she know that is because Gypsy had a signature walk. When they sing, oh, walking, Gypsy walking. You imagine, you know. Me imagine my cousin Bontine. What it was. All of that. And she likes sport too. She come a boxing all front tongue for sport. She said, Glenda said, Gypsy can be recognized by her walk. Here I'm going to pause and think. When women are recognized by their walk, in our history, sometimes our stories aren't written, but the way our bodies move, we are marked by our bodies for good or bad. Gypsy could have been seen in the moonlight. She was not a hiding woman. She wasn't ducking under the table. I don't want to use big words before I come for me. But she didn't want to. She wasn't the kind of woman that was hidden. She was walking in the moonlight. She didn't walk in dark corner. She didn't go down some alley or linden there in the bush. She was a woman out and about, even though it was moonlight. And she was known. Okay. Now, my question was, who watch Gypsy? If Gypsy there a walk a moonlight and I go back at 2:30, what you would do for there see Gypsy, for that talk about Gypsy? So Glenda say, I want stalker. Now what is stalker? Is this harassment? Pan Gypsy doing she walk. Now Glenda is from Borbies, from Sisters Village. Sisters are Hope Town. Sisters. Yeah, Sisters Village. And Glenda say, you know, there are a lot of people who going to talk bad about Gypsy, but she admire Gypsy. Because today, Glenda lives in America. And she said, in America, if you not get up and get, time not important. There are women who go do reputable jobs at 2:30 in the morning. They can't be coming in. You know, when I was home in Guyana, I couldn't imagine working at nights. I remember when I first left and went to another country. You know, I used to try to buy my food before 6 o'clock in the afternoon because in the village, 6 o'clock shop shut. When me go to this other country, whole night shop open. Whole night. And all weekend. You see Japan? Huh? You can find things open all overnight. Then get 24-hour restaurant and so, family restaurants. And if you got to be somewhere coming 2:30 and you can't get bus, guess where you're going? In the family restaurant, go sit down. You go buy one hot dog and sleep there. Yes. So this whole thing is a cultural thing. But I think for the time, what Gypsy was doing was quite scandalous or maybe alarming that it made it into the annals of history. Yes. So Gypsy had a strut. And I feel that when Gypsy strut, her leg impacted the earth and caused a commotion that everybody had to sit up and watch. Nature had the impact and the imprint of Gypsy's foot because the walk was sensational. Right. When they singing the song now and hear the banjo play, I do not love nobody, nobody love me too. All I love is Gypsy and Gypsy loves me too. I pondered that for a long time. I don't know who's talking, whether the banjo people singing that. If the banjo man singing, I do not love nobody, nobody love me too. Poor sucker. You're in a sad state that you love nobody and nobody love you too. Well, you're supposed to not be loved because you got love to be loved, right? So you in a bad state. That's the condition of the person who's singing. But if it's Gypsy now, I do not love nobody, nobody love you too. I feel bad for she because she in a bad state because sometimes, let us say Gypsy was a woman of the night and she down on her luck and that's what all she could find to do. It could be that she has some self-esteem issues. But then they say, no, 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 no. She say, I do not love nobody, nobody love me too. All I love is Gypsy and Gypsy loves me too. If Gypsy talking to herself, then Gypsy get a lot of self-love. And women, we need a self-love because you can't love nobody if you love yourself. And especially if you're a spinal entrepreneur, perhaps you have these issues with self-love. And so you got to dig deep and love yourself. You got to look in that mirror and say, I love me. And, you know, I've talked to women who are mothers and they have said they would do anything for their children. You know, they would go without underwear. They would go without so many things. And they probably do things just to put food on the table for their children, you know. You've heard those stories. You've read those stories. So I don't judge Gypsy, whatever her condition is. And let's say Gypsy go with these men for sport. So what? People have different needs. Different people come from different places. It makes the world go round. Love, love, love. That said, I noticed something. When I lived in Palau, the military was stationed there. And I always noticed that that military base attracted females from across cultures. It seems like wherever the military bases are, the U.S. military bases in particular, females are there. It's a thing. And it's also marking how society works around this phenomenon of putting bases in people's places. So here you have in Trinidad and Tobago, Western power bringing their military there, and look what it's doing to the society. If the Gypsy is a woman of ill repute, bases tend to attract that kind of activity. Good or bad, it's just what it is. In so much so, in Guam, where I have my residence, people are against these bases because of what they do in the community, the kinds of lifestyle that come out of that, the kinds of military incidents that occur, you know. So even in Japan, you know, sometimes the military is not wanted in their places because, like, somebody, an authority who was a military said to me, and I'm quoting, some servicemen are the lowest common denominator. I'm going to say this to give it a balanced view. While the U.S. military in certain places bring a lot of good. There's a lot of bad things that come with it, especially in the case of Guam, where the bases took up the best places on the island. And it's a very hotly contested action, because not only were people's lands taken at the best spots, it impacted the society in a lot of ways, And when students write, they talk about land rights and language rights and settler behavior and colonialism and all the big isms. So that's not our place here to talk about that here, but I just wanted to do that for balance. And in Trinidad and Tobago, we can see the knock-on effects of that, given the guy's story, Waldron's story, and would be true in actual life, that when other people come in those large numbers, they do impact your society. And at the very least, we had this competition for women and the impact of dollars on women and women's lives. It can improve their lives, and it could cause other kinds of disruptions in society. That's all I'm saying. Okay? So, let's continue with the Gypsy in the Moonlight. I wanted to talk about women in their places of work and their places of activity. Sometimes we only hear of them by one name. Like we say Gypsy and Satira and Janie Gal. And some of them don't even have name, like Sanko's lover. Don't have a name, right? And then we have Dinah. You know which Dinah? The one in the kitchen. Someone in the kitchen with Dinah. Someone in the kitchen I know. Someone in the kitchen with Dinah playing the old banjo. Fee fi fo, fee fi fo, fee fi fo, playing the old banjo. I don't know what is it with these women and banjo, but we can see Dinah in the kitchen, Gypsy in the Moonlight, and Satire upon the Dam, right? So I want to ask, like, villagers, have you considered the Gypsy among you or among us? And how do we look at her? Admirably or with disdain, with condescension? How do we regard those people or those women? Do we look at them with shame? Like John said the last time, family disown them, you know? If you had a Gypsy in your family, what would be your response to Gypsy? Is she the kind of woman that mothers will warn their daughters about? You know, sometimes, you know, you hear something in the village and mother call the daughter to the bedroom window. They're listening to the neighbor's raucous. Maybe the neighbor scolding her daughter for some kind of behavior, like she's chasing boys or whatever. And she think that she's too young. And she put on the good scolding, and she calls her daughter to the window and say, hey, you look, listen. You have to not become that. That happens in village. So is the Gypsy subject to be held up for critique and ridicule, an example of what not to be as a woman? But where are we having those conversations about what life can do to you that produces a Gypsy or creates a Gypsy that we get to sit back in our so-called privileged position and talk about? What do we do about that? And the last question is, how do we make space for women or people who are different? Because that's the thing, you know. How do we make space for people who are different? Me included. None of this say when I say you, I ain't pointing fingers. It's just a matter of speaking. But how do we make space for difference? It's one thing to say with our mouths, but when it comes to the actual fact of making space, people can't do that. Whether it's Gypsy or people who identify as gay or LGBTQ, you know, we in the Guyana and the village, we have a very deep intolerance sometimes for people who express and present as other, or who we think are other. These are thoughts I have in my mind. What y'all think? What y'all think about this whole Gypsy story? That's all I got for now. So, I'm going to catch y'all later. Y'all talk the thing. Like, share, subscribe. And for those people who gave me feedback, wonderful, I love it. I got some feedback about some other aspects of this whole gypsy story that I'm not quite familiar with, but I thank you very much for your responses. They're well appreciated. I don't take your responses lightly. Sitting in front of this camera every Sunday or whenever making these videos, they take time, and but I like doing it. And I'm wearing Dara Dara. Dara is my sister. She makes lovely things. If you want to check her out on Instagram, she's got you covered. So, take your time, love one another, love yourself, and walk good.